Hey guys, what's going on? Hayden here. I've been wanting to do this video for quite a while now, but then I got really busy with school a few weeks back, and then Pokemon Sun and Moon came out, and it's just been really crazy. But I finally got some time to sit down and do this with you guys. I want to talk to you guys about the potential of there being a SNES Classic. So the NES Classic came out a few weeks ago, huge success. People are buying that shit like it's their damn job. And the NES Classic is cool to me, but if there was a Super Nintendo Classic system, a little mini SNES, I would buy that in a heartbeat. The Super Nintendo, as you guys might know, is my favorite console of all time, and I just want to talk to you guys about what if there was a Super Nintendo Classic? What games would be on it? So for the purpose of this video, I will be talking about what I think are the most likely games, not exactly what I would like to see, although a lot of the ones that I would like to see do fall into that list. Now, I also will be taking into consideration that the NES Classic had 30 games on it. So to maybe make this video a little easier, let's assume that the SNES Classic, if it's a thing, which let's be real, it's got to be a thing, let's assume that it's going to have 30 games on it. Okay, so that's a number that we can work with, easy number. So before I start listing off games, I've got a list here on my computer that I'm looking at. There will be no licensed games on this. I just think that it would be too much of a task for Nintendo to try and get the licenses for these games that came out like 20, 25 years ago. So you won't see any Lion King or Aladdin or Star Wars. As amazing as those games were on the Super Nintendo, they're not going to be included on this list just because I think it's too much of a hassle for Nintendo to try and get just for ports of those games. Um, Now this is one that hurts me a lot. I don't think there will be any games. I feel that there won't be any games on the SNES Classic that use the Super FX chip. So Star Fox and my favorite 2D platformer of all time, Yoshi's Island, I don't think will be on there. And that is because the Super FX chip is not, it wasn't technically Nintendo's. I mean, it was something that Nintendo got the rights to use it, but it is owned by, I don't even remember the name of the company, but it is not owned by Nintendo completely. So there would be some licensing stuff there. And there's also the fact that anytime that Yoshi's Island has been re-released on Virtual Console, it's been the Game Boy Advance version, which does not use the Super FX chip. And the fact that Star Fox, the original Star Fox, has never been ported before, that tells me that there's a bit of either Nintendo doesn't want to go through the trouble of getting it because of the licensing issues, or just there is like controversy between them with the Super FX chip and whatnot. I just don't think there'll be any games that use the Super FX chip. So unfortunately, Star Fox and Yoshi's Island, and I'm sure there's other games, will not be included. That really hurts me to say. Finally, I won't be including any games that use the Super Scope. The NES Classic didn't have the zapper, so you couldn't do Duck Hunt or anything. At least I don't think you could do Duck Hunt. So I won't be including games like Yoshi Safari and stuff like that. Okay, so let's get started. So let's get some of the obvious ones out of the way. Super Mario World, duh. It's the launch title for the console. It's a mainline Mario game, duh. A Link to the Past. I mean, another duh right there. It's arguably one of the greatest Zelda games ever made. It's my favorite Zelda game personally. You're learning a lot about me in this video too. But Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, of course, that's going to be on there, no doubt. Super Mario Kart, that's the next obvious one. So Super Mario Kart, again, it created the entire kart racing genre. There's not much more you can say than that. I mean, it's Super Mario Kart. You gotta have Mario Kart on. If there's a Mario Kart game on the console, it's gotta be included on a classic version of that console in the vein of the NES Classic. So that's gonna be on there, duh. Number four that I've got on here is F-Zero. So speaking of racers, F-Zero. If Nintendo's really not doing anything with F-Zero now, like making a game wise, they gotta show him some love. I mean, they showed F-Zero some crazy love with the DLC tracks in Mario Kart 8. There was two F-Zero tracks. You got an F-Zero costume, all that stuff. Captain Falcon's in Smash Brothers. So Nintendo still cares about this property. They're just not really doing anything major with it. So an F-Zero port seems reasonable enough to me. Um, Getting back to the platformers, Super Metroid. I mean, that's another duh. You don't really have to explain that one. It's again, it's a lot of people's favorite Metroid game of all time. It's my favorite Metroid game, but I also haven't played the Metroid Prime trilogy, so I guess we'll see there. But I mean, Super Metroid, no duh, that's going to be on there. I mean, it's a Nintendo game. It's one of the best platformers ever made. It's the only Metroid game on the console, so yeah. So moving on to number six, another platformer, Donkey Kong Country. Now, this is like this is major here because this is like one of the best looking games on the Super Nintendo. It revived the Donkey Kong franchise. It's an amazing platformer. Of course, it's going to be on there. And no, it is not owned by Rare. So like the Donkey Kong intellectual property is not owned by Rare. It's owned by Nintendo. That was just a game that was developed by Rare, but it's been re-released on Virtual Console many times. There's going to be no trouble with getting it on the NES Classic. Donkey Kong Country will be there. Speaking of Donkey Kong Country, let's go on to number seven, being Donkey Kong Country 2. I think it's better than the original. I mean, like, yeah, you're not playing as Donkey Kong, but the level design was just so good. It was actually quite a challenging game. There was a lot of different hidden collectibles, and it's just like it's a fun experience the whole way through. I recently replayed it, and my God, that game just it holds up so well. It's so good. Um, like if you're gonna have Donkey Kong Country, you gotta have Donkey Kong Country 2. I mean, that's the debut of Dixie Kong, and she's besides Donkey and Diddy, arguably the most iconic Kong there. I mean, you might argue Cranky Kong is more iconic, but Dixie Kong's an important character, especially because she was just in Tropical Freeze. I definitely think that they want to get Donkey Kong Country 2 on the Virtual Console. Now, as for Donkey Kong Country 3, I don't think that's going to make an appearance. It is the black sheep of the three. If you've played the games, I mean, it's not that much different from the first two, but it is different enough. And it's often referred to as the worst of the three. I still think it's a great game. I just don't think it's as good as the first two. And I think that they do want to leave some room for some other franchises to get onto this SNES Classic. So unfortunately I don't think Donkey Kong Country 3 would make it. I think the first two would. I don't think the third one would. It's just not quite as good as the first two. So moving on to number eight. So we've got seven titles so far. So moving on to number eight, we've got Kirby Superstar. Now, this is another game where it's often considered the best in the series. You've got like I think it's like eight different games on one cartridge. They're shorter games, but they do offer a lot of variety. I mean, one of them is like a traditional Kirby game. One of them's like almost like a Metroidvania style game where you like collect the weapons, then you can go into different parts and whatnot. It's a really cool package, and there's a lot of different cool opportunities on there. I don't see why not. Again, it's considered one of the best in the series, and it's getting some super crazy love in Smash Brothers. Where in Smash Wii U, like there's two Kirby Superstar stages, so I think it's a safe bet that it would be on there. Now moving on to number nine, a more traditional Kirby game, Kirby's Dream Land 3. Now this game had a super cool art style. Um, I think that's a big selling point for why it could be on the SNES Classic. It looks very different than most Super Nintendo games at the time. And it is, again, it's a very traditional Kirby game, so I think it makes enough sense for it to be on the SNES Classic, even though it's not usually as praised as Kirby Superstar. Again, it's a more traditional Kirby experience. I think it would be on the SNES Classic. So, Super Punch-Out is my 10th game that I've got here. So, while it isn't Little Mac and it's not as iconic as the NES game, it is Punch-Out, and Punch-Out has made a kind of a revival in the past few years with Super Punch-Out on the Wii, and then Little Mac being in Smash Brothers. I think if they had a Punch-Out game, people would play it. I think it'd be, and Punch-Out was on the NES Classic anyway, so Super Punch-Out, I could see it happening. And there's no like Mike Tyson licensing issues there, so that's all good. Um, Now we've covered a lot of first-party Nintendo games. Let's move on to some second-party games, but they were still really big on the console. So we're still in the vein of platformers, and I think the one that everyone thinks about when it's not a Nintendo game, it's not a Nintendo developed game, but it was a huge hit on the Super Nintendo, Mega Man X. Oh God, one of the best platformers ever made. It's my favorite Mega Man game personally. Mega Man X is just so damn good. And again, Capcom and Nintendo have a very warm relationship right now. Mega Man and Ryu got into Smash Brothers. The Capcom games are being released on the Virtual Console like crazy. Like Capcom is definitely have a really good relationship with Nintendo. There's no way in hell that Mega Man X would not be on the SNES Classic. So, I don't think anyone would argue that. Mega Man X, oh, so damn good. Now, what about its sequels, X2 and X3? Well, let's talk about X2 for a sec. X2, it's much easier than Mega Man X. It's still a fairly challenging game, but it's much easier than Mega Man X. And the level design isn't quite up to par with Mega Man, with the original Mega Man X, but X2 is still a really solid entry. I mean, there was some really creative bosses. The weapons were really fun to use. Um, Again, Sigma came back, and there's some pretty iconic battles there with Zero at the end. Spoilers if you haven't played a game that's like 21 years old or something. But Mega Man X2, I think it's still solid enough to get onto this list. Now, Mega Man X3. Ugh, by no means is it a bad game. It's just not nearly as good as the first two. A lot of people have made this comparison before, and I personally agree. A lot of people say that Mega Man X3, if it was a game that was released nowadays, it almost feels like a DLC expansion pack opposed to an original game. The level design just wasn't quite up to par with the first two. Um, the bosses were the bosses were meh. The weapons were kind of meh. Um, it just wasn't that great of an experience, especially compared to the first two. Like Donkey Kong Country 3, I don't think it's going to make it onto the SNES Classic. I think Mega Man X and Mega Man X2 are more than enough for your Mega Man experience, at least with the SNES Classic. But again, X3 is not a bad game. I just don't think it's as good as the first two, and I don't think it's enough to make it onto the SNES Classic. Sorry. Now moving on to some more Capcom stuff. If you're not thinking Mega Man, what's the other big franchise from Capcom, especially that was big back in the 90s? Street Fighter, right? They got to have a version of Street Fighter 2 on there. Again, I'm not a huge Street Fighter fan, so I haven't followed the series that much, but from what I understand, Street Fighter 2 Super Turbo Edition is like the big one. That's the one that everyone still kind of plays. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm not a big Street Fighter person, but I definitely think that there's going to be a Street Fighter 2 on the SNES Classic. So, and I think that it would be Super Turbo just based on the little research I did. I mean, duh. Like it's Street Fighter. It's still they're still making games for it today. It's still huge today in the competitive scene. Whether it's Street Fighter 2 or Street Fighter 5, you got to have Street Fighter on there, of course. So moving on to number 14. So we're almost halfway through the list. Another Capcom game, Super Ghouls and Ghosts. This game is a hardcore platformer. Like, my God, like you beat the game and then you realize you got to beat the game over again to actually beat the game. Oh, it has broken so many people's balls over the years, but it's a rewarding game. I've never actually played it. I've only seen reviews of it and footage of it and playthroughs of it. But my God, like that game looks so hard. But it looks like it's one of those ones where like you want to beat it. Like you keep coming back for more. I think Nintendo's got to have a few really hardcore platformers on there. Um, I think it would make people really commit to the challenge of the game, and seeing that there's this really really hard game on there. So I think Super Ghouls and Ghosts, I think is a perfect title for it. Now a Capcom game, but it's not a platformer. This is actually an RPG. Breath of Fire. Now this game's a little weird because um, it had really bad translations, but by no means was it a bad RPG. I mean, it's not nearly as good as some of the other RPGs that will be on this list later. Um, but I think a Capcom RPG, I think it makes enough sense to go on there. I mean, again, Capcom and Nintendo, very good relationship, and the SNES had amazing RPGs. I think that would be a major selling point for the classic SNES. Um, because the NES didn't really have a lot of RPGs, but the Super Nintendo was crazy for RPGs. And if you want to appeal to a large demographic, a large Super Nintendo demographic, you got to put some RPGs on there. Putting one on there from Capcom, it makes sense. Breath of Fire. I don't think they'd need to put Breath of Fire 2 on there. I mean, the translations, from my experience, are even worse than that game. They're terrible. But I think if you just stuck with the original Breath of Fire, I think that would be fine. Yeah, so that's half of the games. That is 15 games down, 15 to go. Getting back to the platformers for a sec, let's talk about Konami's games. Super Castlevania 4. Oh, I gotta play this game. I've been meaning to get around to it for a long time now. Maybe I'll do that on stream. Now that I've been streaming a little bit, maybe I'll do a blind playthrough of that on stream. But Super Castlevania 4, you gotta remember the super. Oh, so, like, again, a lot of people say it's one of the best in the Castlevania series. The music in that game is just so damn amazing. Um, I don't see any problem with getting this game on the SNES Classic. I mean, it's been on the Wii U Virtual Console. Um, Castlevania, still, it's not really around anymore today, so you might as well make the best of the older games. Yeah, Super Castlevania 4, I think it makes enough sense to be on there. Yeah, so let's move on to. I don't want to spend too much time on each game because there is a lot of games to get through. Turtles in Times, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time. This is arguably the arguably the best arcade beat 'em up game on the SNES. And excuse me, just had my breakfast. Yeah, Turtles in Time. It's still played today by a lot of people. A lot of people always go back and play that game. The music in that game is insane, especially that sewer surfing theme. Oh, so damn good. Turtles in Time, great co-op experience, great co-op beat 'em up. And that was another thing that the SNES was really good about was like arcade style beat 'em up games. If you're gonna have one on there, Turtles in Time is definitely the one to put on there. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I mean, still a very iconic brand today. Um, Made by Konami. I don't think that there'd be any trouble getting it on there. I know I said no licensed games before, but I think this is kind of an exception. It is a really, really special game. And I think Nintendo would do their best to get a game as good as this on here. That said, I don't think other licensed games would make it on here. They just don't. A lot of the licensed games on the SNES just don't really have um, the same iconicness that Turtles in Time has had and has aged with. So that's kind of why I think Turtles in Time would make it on here. So moving on to number 18 now, Contra 3. This is another Konami game, another very hardcore platformer. Um, I've never actually beaten this game. This is one of the few games on here that I've never actually beaten that I have played. But if they did re-release it on SNES Classic, I would try and beat it. Man, that game is so much fun. Um, like the Contra series, it's not completely dead. I mean, there was Contra 4 on the DS like 7-ish years ago, something like that. So Contra's still a thing, although Konami has kind of, fucked up and they're just doing pachinko machines and mobile games now or something like that. Um, but I think it can still make it on there. Um, Again, it was re-released on it was on the Wii Virtual Console, I believe, and I think it was on Wii U as well. I think I've seen it on there before, so I don't think there'd be too much trouble getting it on the SNES Classic. But I guess we'll see. I think Contra 3 is a great game. It's a very fun platformer, very hardcore platformer. It's one of those ones that's very similar to Ghouls and Ghosts, where it's just like you wanna really beat it. You just keep coming back despite it killing you over and over. So yeah. Um, all right, so that's 18 games. We haven't talked too much RPG. We've only talked about Breath of Fire. Nintendo and Square is a weird relationship because for a while there, after Final Fantasy VII, they kind of weren't buddy buddy. But the Game Boy Advance kind of came around and they started to kind of do stuff with Nintendo again, and they've been seemingly pretty good since. I think they have an amazing relationship now. I mean, with Cloud and Smash Brothers and a Geno skin, I know that's not as big as Cloud, but like Cloud and Smash Brothers, Nintendo and Square have to have an amazing relationship right now. So I think that there's a good chance that we will get lots of Square developed games on the SNES Classic. I mean, we did get Final Fantasy, one of the Final Fantasies on the NES Classic. Why can't there be ones on the SNES Classic? And again, like I was talking about before, a huge selling point of the Super Nintendo was the RPG catalog on it. Like the Super Nintendo was an RPG player's dream console. And I love there's still some RPGs I want to play that I haven't gotten to play yet. Um, but the SNES Classic would have to have tons of RPGs. Like that game, that would make it sell really well. It would add a lot more value to your buy because RPGs are much longer than other games. So let's get into this. Um, Earthbound. While it's not a Square developed RPG, it's developed by Ape, Nintendo. No doubt it would get on the SNES Classic. Um, Again, Earthbound Beginnings came out last year in 2015. Earthbound's been on the Virtual Console. We got Lucas and Ness in Smash Brothers Wii U. Nintendo knows that people love the Mother series. No doubt Earthbound would get on there. That is 19 games down. Let's move on to number 20, Super Mario RPG. That game has been recently re-released on the Wii U Virtual Console. I believe it was on the Wii Virtual Console as well. Um, no doubt it would get in. Nintendo has a very, like I was just saying, Nintendo has a very good relationship with Square. Super Mario RPG, I mean, that's Mario and the king of RPGs making a game together. You can't not have that on the SNES Classic. Super Mario RPG, that's a done deal in my opinion. Chrono Trigger. Oh, again, one that I really want to play, but this is a game that basically it's often referred to as the best RPG ever made, sometimes even the best game ever made. This is a huge game. Um, it really seems like Square has they don't really want to do anything with the Chrono Trigger intellectual property, like with it in regards to a new game. If that's the case, at least re-release it on Virtual Console. I mean, there was a DS port, I don't know how many years ago, probably like 8, 9, 10 years ago at this point. But it's obvious that Square still somewhat cares about Chrono Trigger. Um, I think putting it on the SNES Classic isn't too much to ask for. Um, yeah, Final Fantasy VI, another huge RPG that, again, it's often rivaled with Chrono Trigger as to which one is better. Um, again, Final Fantasy is Square's big series that they work on. It's their biggest franchise. Um, you got to have a Final Fantasy entry on there. Final Fantasy VI, or in North America, I think it's been called Final Fantasy III in North America. Um, some confusing stuff there. Again, another game you got to have on there. It's got so many memorable scenes, like that opera scene, the opening. Like there's just so many damn good uh, moments from Final Fantasy VI. Some people call it even better than Final Fantasy VII. I mean, what is there to say? You got to have Final Fantasy VI on there. Now, this is where the list started to get a little tough. We've got 22 games on here right now. And I tried to kind of think of some other, maybe more obscure games that were still fun, but not nearly as recognizable. So my 23rd game that I have on here is Pilot Wings. Pilot Wings was a game that really didn't get much attention back in the day from my perspective, but Nintendo's really been pushing it lately. I mean, we got the Pilot Wings re-releases on the Virtual Console. There was a Pilot Wings stage in Super Smash Bros. That had some damn catchy music, let me tell you. I think it's enough. I think that's enough to kind of make people realize, oh, like I remember this Pilot Wings thing from Super Smash Brothers. Like, yeah, let's give it a try. I think Pilot Wings could make it on here. As far as I know, it's a Nintendo developed game, or at least a second party game or something like that. Pilot Wings makes enough sense. It's an obscure gem from what I can tell. Um, Harvest Moon is my 24th pick. Now, this is a game by Konami, I believe. I don't have all the stuff on here on screen. I just have my list. But I believe it's by Konami. Again, I could see it getting on here very easily. Konami's had a good relationship with Nintendo before with re-releasing Virtual Console stuff, and I believe Harvest Moon is on the Wii U Virtual Console, and I can't really see it being much trouble. Farm simulator games are still very big these days. We got what is it? It's the name's escaping me right now. Stardew Valley, I think is what it's called. Um, that's been a very big game lately. Um, Harvest Moon on Super Nintendo, you could spend hours upon hours on that game, similar to RPGs, where you could waste your life away on it. It's a game that's still played today. I actually have a friend who still plays it nowadays. Um, I think Harvest Moon's a fair choice. It's different. It's very different than the other games on this list, but it's still a very fun game. NBA Jam. Now, this is a game I was kind of hesitant on putting on here. I was hesitant on putting any sports games on here, but it is a game that was a lot of fun back in the day. Very popular multiplayer game, and the Switch. Just off topic for a sec, the Switch actually showed them playing like in that reveal trailer. It showed them playing a basketball game, like kind of versus each other. Don't know if it was NBA Jam or not, like or an NBA Jam reboot or whatever. Um, I think NBA Jam, if there is going to be a sports game on the SNES Classic, NBA Jam seems to be the one. Again, Nintendo seems to be doing something with basketball nowadays with the Switch. Makes enough sense that they would want to port one of the best basketball games ever onto the SNES Classic. So we've got 5 more games to talk about. And this is where things started to get really, really tough for me. Um, so I put I don't know which one of these would go on here. I put Secret of Mana and Secret of Evermore both in this slot. Secret of Mana, I think, would beat out Evermore. It's a little more iconic. The fact that you can do multiplayer with it was a huge selling point for an action RPG. But the reason I also put Evermore on here is because it's basically my personal bias. I still think it's an amazing game. Um, I actually haven't. I never actually beat Secret of Mana. I only got about halfway through it. But Secret of Evermore, the story in that game is so damn good. The writing is amazing. It was way ahead of its time. Um, and I really just can't make a decision on if it would be Secret of Mana or Secret of Evermore. Probably Mana. It is the more iconic game overall, but Secret of Evermore I think is super underrated. I think the SNES Classic could really help that game kind of get the attention that it deserves. It's one of my favorite Super Nintendo games. I just don't think it's as iconic as Mana. So Secret of Mana or Evermore, don't really know there. I can't really make a decision on that one. So that's my number 26 slot. 27, Earthworm Jim. This game, it's definitely an obscure one. Not that many people have heard of it. It's almost become like a cult classic. Earthworm Jim, I think, would be. It's a game that I've never played, but I think that this would be a perfect opportunity to get more people aware of the Earthworm Jim property, especially because that is pretty much dead on the ground. I mean, after Earthworm Jim on the Nintendo 64, they didn't really do much with it afterwards. I think Earthworm Jim, though, it looks like a fun game. And it's been re-released on Steam not too long ago. So Nintendo could definitely do something there with the licensing and whatnot to get it onto the SNES Classic. Probably some legal hurdles that they'd have to jump over, but I think it could happen, especially because if it came out on Steam, why not re-release it on a classic version of the original console it was on? It was also on Sega Genesis, yes. Um, I think it could happen, though. I think it makes enough sense. It's a cult classic platformer. I think it could happen. Number 28, Tetris Attack. Now, you gotta have Tetris on a Nintendo. If it's gonna be a re-released Nintendo Classic Edition version console thing, that was really badly worded. Um, Tetris, I think it makes enough sense. Tetris is one of the highest played games ever, whether you're playing it on your phone, on your Game Boy, what have you, on the NES. Uh, Tetris is a huge game, and Tetris Attack on the Super Nintendo was actually, I never played it, but there's just Nintendo characters like all over it. Like there's like Mario and Yoshi and Bowser and like all these Nintendo characters in it for some reason. Again, I've never played it. Um, Having a Tetris game on there makes sense. Tetris is something that's still relevant to Nintendo nowadays. I mean, we've gotten Tetris music in Super Smash Bros. Wii U and in Smash Bros. Brawl. Um, Tetris. I mean, it's Tetris. Why wouldn't you have it on the SNES? It's a very addictive game, and it's got this version that's got Nintendo characters all in it. So sure, why not? Now, I know I was saying I was struggling before. I was really, really struggling for 2 more games to put on this list. So my number 29 spot is Hagani. This is a game I had never even heard of until like a couple days ago. The Game Grumps were actually playing it on their channel. But it's it looks like a hardcore platformer like Contra, but you're like a ninja assassin instead. I mean, you've got this like whip blade thing. You can throw grenades. Like that's all I can really say about it. It was very hard to find, I guess. It was decently popular in Japan, but it was only available in America at Blockbuster, I guess. So it was a very hard to find game, and I think it's a time to make this game shine. I mean, if it looks like a really fun game, it looks underappreciated. Maybe this is the time to make it shine. And finally, my 30th game I have on here was Super Mario The Lost Levels. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This is originally an NES game. Yes, but it got a re-release, so to speak, on the Super Nintendo in the Super Mario All-Stars, the Super Mario All-Stars compilation package. I don't think that they would put Super Mario All-Stars on here just because you had the original Mario games on the NES Classic, but we didn't actually get Super Mario The Lost Levels or Super Mario Brothers 2 in Japan. I think this is the perfect time to get it. Get the Super Nintendo version. I mean, it looks beautiful. It still looks beautiful today. The graphics have aged amazingly. Um, and Super Mario Brothers 2, The Lost Levels, is not really a game that's been easy to find. I mean, it's been re-released on Virtual Console. There was a Super Mario All-Stars re-release on the Wii, but there's not very many ways to play it that people know about. I think this is a good time to get it on there. I mean, it's another Mario game. Why wouldn't you have more Mario on there? I mean, it's Nintendo. They love Mario, and people love Mario, so I think it's fine. And it's a very hard game, actually. I think this is another one of those, like, it could fall into the hardcore platformer category. Yeah, I think it makes sense for the SNES Classic. But I just realized something while I was editing this together. Screw number 29. We are putting Zombies Ate My Neighbors on there instead. That game is so damn good. It's such a cult classic. Super great multiplayer. Super difficult. Something I actually still go back to with my friends. Number 29, don't really know that much about it. Super Ghouls and or not Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Zombies Ate My Neighbors. That is definitely my other. I'm replacing number 29 with Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I can't believe I forgot about that while I was recording. God damn, I'm a failure. Those are my 30 choices for the Super Nintendo Classic. Holy cow, what a video. That took a while. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Are there any games that you think should be on here that aren't on here? Do you think that games like Yoshi's Island and Star Fox could get on here? I mean, I don't think so because of the whole Super FX chip licensing stuff. But if you think so, let me know why in the comments. Again, those are really amazing games. I just don't think they'll happen. If you enjoyed this video, of course, please leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more Nintendo goodness and other just Nintendo stuff, leaks, rumors, discussions, reviews, all that good stuff. I will see you guys later. Oh, follow me on Twitter too. Follow me on Twitter. Link for those in the description below. Take care of yourselves. Peace out. Bye.